answers. Some are calling it racing, some are calling it bad luck, and others are asking a much bigger question. Should NASCAR have suspended Bubba Wallace for what happened in the Talladega Big One? Because whether you blame him or not, this crash has once again put Bubba Wallace directly in the center of controversy, and the reaction afterward has been louder than anyone expected. Talladega has always been chaos waiting to happen. It is the one track where the entire race can change in half a second. One mistimed push, one unstable bumper, one move too aggressive, and the whole field can disappear in smoke. That is exactly what happened during the Jack Link's 500. On lap 115, Bubba Wallace was leading the pack when Ross Chastain gave him a strong push from behind. The contact upset Wallace's No. 23 Toyota, sent him sideways into the wall, and triggered a massive 26-car wreck that immediately brought out the red flag. It became one of the biggest crashes of the season, and from that moment on, the blame game began. Because whenever a big one happens at Talladega, fans do not just move on, they analyze every frame, every bump, every block, every steering input, every radio call. And this time, a large part of the fan base immediately pointed at Bubba Wallace, not because he intentionally caused it, but because they believed he mishandled the push, that he got too unstable, that he reacted poorly, that a veteran superspeedway racer should have controlled the car better. And when social media erupted, the conversation escalated fast. Some fans even began demanding NASCAR review the crash for disciplinary action, not because of malicious intent, but because of the scale of destruction. Because 26 cars were involved, half the field was wiped out, championship contenders were eliminated instantly, and when a wreck changes the race that dramatically, people start looking for accountability. But here is the reality. As of now, NASCAR has announced no suspension for Bubba Wallace related to the Talladega wreck. The crash has been treated as a racing incident stemming from pack racing contact, not a disciplinary matter. Still, that has not stopped the debate. Because Bubba Wallace has history when it comes to NASCAR discipline. Many fans still remember his 2022 suspension after intentionally retaliating against Kyle Larson at Las Vegas. NASCAR suspended Wallace then because officials determined the move was intentional and dangerous. That precedent matters. Because now some fans are comparing every major Wallace controversy to that moment and asking, if NASCAR suspended him before, why not now? The answer is simple. Intent. The Las Vegas incident involved retaliation. Talladega did not. Talladega was pack racing. A bump from Ross Chastain unsettled Wallace's car. Wallace himself admitted afterward that his car became unstable under the push and said the team needed to debrief and improve. That quote matters because it shows Bubba took responsibility for the outcome without admitting recklessness. He did not blame everyone else. He did not deny the mistake. He simply acknowledged what happened. The push was too much. The car got unstable. And the result was disaster. That is why NASCAR is not treating this like a suspension-worthy event. Because if officials began suspending drivers every time a superspeedway push went wrong, half the field would miss races every year. Talladega does not work like normal tracks. Superspeedway racing is built on aggression. Drivers must bump, must push, must stay inches apart at 190 plus mph. That is the risk of the format. And many drivers admitted afterward that the current superspeedway package contributes to exactly these kinds of wrecks. Joey Logano explained that the cars are extremely unstable when bumping because of the current design and aerodynamic characteristics, saying drivers can pop the bubble too easily when they get to each other's bumpers. That comment changed the conversation. Because suddenly, the debate was no longer just about Bubba Wallace. It became about the cars themselves, the package, the design, the way modern superspeedway racing creates instability under pushes. And that is where things got interesting. Because while fans argued online, drivers inside the garage were saying something very different. Many were not blaming Bubba at all. They were blaming the nature of modern pack racing. They were blaming the superspeedway package. They were blaming how fragile the cars become once bump drafting starts. That split between fan reaction and driver reaction says everything. Fans want someone to blame. Drivers understand how little margin exists in those moments. Because every superspeedway veteran knows you can do everything right and still get turned. That is Talladega. That is Daytona. That is pack racing. And yet, the controversy still follows Bubba harder than most drivers. Because whether fair or not, he remains one of the most polarizing figures in NASCAR. Every mistake gets magnified. Every wreck gets debated harder. Every controversy gets louder. That is the reality of being Bubba Wallace in modern NASCAR. And Talladega only reinforced that. Even though Carson Hocevar went on to win his first Cup Series race that day, a huge part of post-race discussion still centered around Wallace and the wreck. That tells you everything. Because even in defeat, even after being eliminated in the crash himself, Bubba remained the center of the narrative. That kind of spotlight is exhausting. And some fans now wonder whether Wallace is simply tired of it. Not literally done with NASCAR, but emotionally worn down by constantly being in the middle of controversy. Because no matter what happens, he becomes the headline. If he races aggressively, he gets criticized. If he races conservatively, he gets criticized. If he wins, people debate it. If he crashes, people demand punishment. Very few drivers operate under that kind of constant scrutiny. And that pressure adds up. Still, Bubba Wallace did not respond like someone quitting. He responded like a driver frustrated by the outcome, but focused on moving forward. He called the Talladega result unfortunate, said they would review what happened, and said the team would put it behind them and move on to Texas. That does not sound like a man done with NASCAR. It sounds like a competitor doing what racers do, learning, resetting, moving on. But the bigger issue remains. Talladega reignited a serious conversation about superspeedway racing. Because when 26 cars pile into one wreck, that is no longer just part of racing to many fans. That is a warning sign. A sign that the current package may create too much instability, too little room for error, too much dependence on uncontrolled bumping. And if NASCAR agrees, then Talladega's biggest consequence may not be discipline for Bubba Wallace. It may be future rule changes, package adjustments, superspeedway modifications. Because this crash was too big to ignore. And if more wrecks like this keep happening, pressure will grow quickly. That puts NASCAR in a difficult spot. Because fans love the chaos of superspeedways. Until the wrecks get too frequent. Drivers love the opportunity. Until the danger outweighs the reward. Teams love the excitement. Until half their fleet gets destroyed in one afternoon. That balance is becoming harder to manage. And Bubba Wallace just happened to be at the center of the latest example. So no, he was not suspended. No, NASCAR did not issue disciplinary action. And no, there is no official sign Bubba Wallace is leaving the sport. But yes, Talladega created another major controversy around his name. Yes, fans are divided again. Yes, the debate over blame remains intense. And yes, the pressure on both Wallace and NASCAR continues to grow. Because when a driver becomes this tied to controversy, every moment gets bigger, every mistake gets louder, every race carries more scrutiny. That is where Bubba Wallace stands right now. Not suspended, not done, but once again, at the center of NASCAR's loudest argument. And if the next superspeedway race brings more chaos, this conversation may only get bigger. Because Talladega did not end the debate. It restarted it. If you want, I can make this even more viral YouTube style with stronger emotional pacing / cloud style dramatic narration for higher retention.